the president of the company asked me, how would you fix this and what's wrong with it? And I said, well, what we do is we don't fix things just from a visual standpoint. We fix it from a workflow standpoint. So it's a much deeper fix. It entails not just providing assets, but teaching your organization how to think from a user-centric position versus a development-centric.
What it's going to be simplified to with a conversational UI is you won't need screens anymore. It'll just be a sort of fluid thread of interactions where you can say, well, I can interact with a language model that's tied to automation, that I can ask them to do A and B and C and then go on to D, E, F. Whatever I need is done in a single interface. It is really going to revolutionize how we do everything.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Inexperienced Podcast. I'm your host, Makoto Kern. Today, we have somebody who's been on my team for a very long time, from the very beginning. His name's Brynley Evans. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Makoto. It's good to be on.
We've started this journey, 20 years ago? 20 plus?
It's been a good journey. It's been long. I mean, it must be 20 years. It's easier to kind of list the industries we haven't worked in, and I think the ones that we have, because it's just been so broad and so many different clients and challenges to overcome, which is really part of the industry, which is, it's been good.
I know, for sure. We started off in wood industry. I mean, it was websites basically where we were getting our...
And kind of interactive Flash. I mean, I think before that, I'd sort of been doing online sort of solutions, so web-based HTML Flash, bit of illustration as well. And I mean, that's way before UX was even thought of. I mean, there were, it was the sort of just looking at best practices and kind of psychology, I guess, and applying that to digital design, which was kind of expanding field. You think where it's come from between now and then, it's crazy.
For sure. And now, I mean, after we've evolved from looking at websites and redesigning those to now we're full speed ahead with the AI revolution, helping out clients with that, to enterprise software, helping redesign. I mean, you're with one of our longest clients right now. I think it's going on almost 10 years.
Yeah, that's right.
In the energy industry, where we've helped redesign, countless enterprise applications that are pretty complex. And you've been leading that team as well for a while now, and that's been going pretty good.
And just the shift, I mean, in the sort of almost 10 years we've been there, just to see the sort of shift in what's available and just the way technology is going, it is incredible. There's so much change.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just the growth and maturity just that we've seen within our own kind of group and within our own just company, and trying to take a lot of these learnings from the different clients that we have, and seeing some of the same kind of risks and problems it's within clients, and whatever stage they're at in their launch of their software, you can forecast the problems that are going to be happening with them.
Absolutely. I think every project's still a kind of unique set of kind of variables. I mean, I found you get to learn processes, but I think, each team is different. Each client has different sort of, roles in there and different strategies you need to apply to kind of achieve the goal of, kind of outputting a successful solution, and kind of seeing that through.
Yeah, I think before we jump into some of these details, maybe we get a little bit about just kind of what inspired you to pursue a career in design and technology.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think I've always been probably most interested in kind of creating things and dreaming up solutions in all kind of avenues of life. Right from when I was young, just loving kind of working on any kind of illustration, or putting something together, even if it's kind of when I was really young, tinkering kind of with software development, and I think that sort of directed me in a line to sort of go, well, look, I can use these two tools. I can use my my kind of creativity and computers as a tool to create digital products. And I think that's, to this day, kind of keeps me engaged, and I just love working in the space, especially just the speed at which it kind of evolves and advances. It's never a boring moment.
I think with your background, you also, I mean, you got into some photography. Is that right? And
Yeah,
did that help kind of influence some of the design
I think
piece of it?
that was after sort of I think really it was loving kind of probably art and doing art in school, and then kind of being influenced by certain design thinking, and just wanting to create. It really comes down to wanting to sort of create anything, whether that's building something in out of wood or building something on a computer. It's like creating something, and if it's aligned with certain design movements or trends, and that's really what we're doing. I mean, we're sort of keeping our finger on the pulse of what's trending from a sort of visual design standpoint, and converting it into using good best practices, and the right methodologies to kind of convert it into a product that really exceeds everyone's expectations. So I think, in terms of background, I mean, I can remember kind of playing around, probably being about 5 years old, playing around on a friend's Hercules computer monochrome green screen. I was like, we're going to hack in and find those documents from your mom. We're going to do it. And it's just that sort of like breaking, just trying to dissect things and understand how they're built and how you can modify them, and how you can also bring elements of design into things to make things more visually appealing. And there's so many aspects to it, I think, which is really, when you look at the software development lifecycle, exactly what we sort of as a UX agency bring to the table and get involved with, and that sort of ideation to creation and actually creating that product. So I mean, I think a lot of things that have pushed me down this path, which I've thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, I think I always say you're like one of the unicorns on our team, where you can do both design and dev. Obviously that's a left brain, right brain kind of fight whenever you're doing work. And
Yeah,
I mean, what do you enjoy doing most? Is it the development side? Is it the design side?
I think it's the balance, and I think probably the problem solving. I always think UX is that sort of balance of can you collect all the facts, and can you review the facts, and then create something that balances everything and solve that problem, like solve that unique challenge. Because I think I mentioned challenges earlier. It's really, that's what most solutions are. They're a specific set of criteria that almost form a challenge to solve and come up with an ideal product. So yeah, I think all aspects, coming back to the sort of balance point, if you can be involved in all aspects of a project, you get to enjoy that balance of switching from again that ideation to development, and seeing it right through to kind of the finished product, which is really rewarding, I think.
For sure. I mean, talk about challenging. Can you give us a little story about probably one of the more challenging projects or more interesting projects that you've had to face, and tell us a
Yeah,
little bit about that?
I think looking at all projects have that sort of challenge aspect, but I think one that stands out is a big project we're doing to revamp an entire kind of UI, and this was across enterprise products with hundreds of screens. I think the total was about 500. We needed to come up with a sort of layout system that would almost be content aware and use technology to allow it to understand what content is on a screen, and each screen has sort of different functions and features, very kind of data heavy applications. And I think that was a challenge just in terms of delivering that, like a small team, a team of 3, and just managing that and getting through. I think
Was I on that team
space.
as well?
Oh. Do you want to be on the team? I don't know whether you would have wanted to, but it was good. I mean, we really yeah, we did amazing output in that year, and I think just managing the stakeholders and getting through the sort of 500 screens in a year with an incredible amount of work and QA. I think that was probably challenging just by sheer quantity, and also we had proposed this new sort of design solution and this new user interface. So to roll it out and to have just really great feedback. That's where everyone, the PMs, right down to the users, coming back and saying, look, you've made an amazing difference in the product. And to me, that was interesting because you had that sort of challenge and we completed it successfully, but the reward of users actually saying, like, you actually listen to us, we've been saying this for ages, and you were able to sort of come in and take our feedback and turn it into something that makes our lives easier. I think that was a great kind of cherry on top to a very challenging, deadline heavy kind of project.
I remember, and I know which project we're talking about here. Just initially when we went in there with this client and just sitting around the board, they had their C-suite in the room, and they're looking at me and they're showing me the screens and asking, "So how would you fix this?" In front of like 15, 20 people. Yeah. The president of the company asked me, "How would you fix this? And what's wrong with it?" And I said, "Well, first of all, that's not UX. What you're talking about is UI."
Yeah.
And what we do is we don't fix things just from a visual standpoint. We fix it from a workflow standpoint. So it's a much deeper fix. And it entails not just providing assets, but teaching your organization how to think from a user-centric position versus a development-centric.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're talking about is a lot of the things that we help champion within the organization is just that, is changing your mindset to think like, oh, we know what we know about the user, we're just going to build this and they're just going to use it. But actually getting feedback, understanding will they really need it. And I'm sure you remember when we were testing with users, some of the SMEs in the room that were giving us assumptions on features, who were in the industry for years, for decades, they even made wrong assumptions. And so, we're seeing that with a lot of the, enterprise software as well. You've got users that are so used to a workflow. You change something in there, immediately it's going to be negative change. Even if their workflow is not efficient, it's efficient for them because they know it. And now you're changing the entire interface around. It's always a hard thing to go in and make changes to something that they've used for years.
And so that's where we love that sort of Kubler-Ross diagram of the design for grief, but
psychological change.
But kind of walks everyone through the kind of grief of UI change. And it is, I mean, that's particularly sort of funny to apply because you do see it. You see it in any sort of rollout you do. Oh, no, can't stand it. And all those sort of denial and depression. And then, oh, no, this is pretty good. No, I think I prefer it to the last one. Exactly. So you go through, you ride that with all your, all the users. It's very funny.
Yeah, I remember. And I remember when I'm talking to this specific client and talking to the VP, I remember that particular incident where I'm sitting in the office when we're doing our pitch, and when I hear they had one of the biggest UX agencies that I know as a potential competitor to us, and I would follow some of their blogs and some of their things, and like, oh, okay, that's who we're competing against. One of the things that made him pick us, our company over theirs, was the fact that I said, look, we're not only going to tell you what we think or recommend what is best, but also help you execute on this and take ownership of what we recommend and be with you along the way. And I don't think this other company was willing to do that. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a lot of agencies don't do that either way, because that takes a lot of risk. The tactical work does take a different management of the teams. You're embedded within the teams. It's hard. It's difficult to do that. And so it's easy to just tell you, here you go, wipe your hands clean, see you later, give us our money.
Absolutely.
But to stay with the client for long term is hard.
And I think that's, how do you effectively integrate UX? So it's not a once-off process. You can't come in and say, right, we helped you here, good luck, goodbye. It really needs to be an organizational change. And they need to realize that UX is a kind of key part of that software development cycle. And, if they don't build that in, then, any effort you've done is lost. And give it some time, and UX will be worked right out of it.
I think one of the things you've also mentioned before that you've experienced is, product managers and product owners have such a key role within an organization. And because they are kind of they're the bridge between business development and design. And if you've got somebody who's risk adverse and doesn't know how to utilize UX to the full capacity, where you reduce risk, you test things out, and then you stay ahead of the competition by being innovative, not by saying, well, let's not change anything. It works as it is. That's a scary thing to hear from product owners and product managers who aren't trying to push things and constantly improve. They just want to keep the status quo, don't rock the boat.
That's why you get impact in, really, is, I think that's what makes us unique, is the fact that we're all sort of hardwired for innovation. It's just, it kind of feels like it's part of our, to be dramatic, but it's in our blood, but it's kind of, we want to see real change. And that's why, if you're passionate about UX or, anything in the sort of software development, you want to make a difference. You want to make things better. You want to continually improve. And I think that's our mindset. So we're in there, and, you have to push. You literally have to push the needle all the time.
Yeah. And we're not involved with the political game as much. I mean, we do have to make change from the top up to be effective. I know that organizations that don't have UX towards its seat at the table, or at least the ear with the leadership, then it's just going to be looked as an asset at the end of, okay, great, we've got the idea, just make the design look pretty, make our brand colors fit within the app.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we're good.
And that's the problem of, what you don't know, you don't know. Like, if you've never been exposed to a good process, you don't know the capabilities of it, or, the advantages of it. And in some ways, I think, just like you were saying, a top-down approach, we've often, had to take top-down and bottom-up, because often the meaningful daily change takes place right at the bottom. And that's, right from sort of changing your acceptance criteria for developing something. Like, does it include, UX or a review of something, or, before you're starting development, do you have, UX sign off on something, or, do you have, completing a job, updating the UX team as well to sort of, keep everyone in sync. So I think there's a lot to be said for kind of taking both the approaches.
Yeah, I think right now you probably have a bit of a challenge. I mean, how do you help the client understand the value of UX? And, what do you see, I guess, with some of the things that they get wrong when trying to launch a new application or a redesign? So what are the things that you've seen as challenges, and what have you done to kind of help it through? Because I know you're constantly championing UX within the client organization, but, sometimes it gets fallen on deaf ears. Sometimes people don't want to hear it.
The problem is, I think, when everyone has established workflows, you're trying to sort of wedge yourself in there and go, look, this is valuable. And until you've proven that, and I think, proving it for a net new client is very difficult versus, converting people within an organization, which, I'm sort of doing on a daily basis. But that's really, you organize a workshop, or you have just a basic working session with with a product manager and the client. And I think just from the questions we asked and the sort of approach that we take, people can start seeing immediate value because they may have approached a certain subject a million times with a client, and we take a different approach and we get a different result. And I think that can be refreshing often when they're saying, well, we haven't had that feedback from the client before. We didn't know they could participate like that, or changing in some cases what could be a negative relationship into a positive relationship just by giving someone a voice. Particularly sort of users or clients, just be able to say, well, let's hear you, let's value your feedback, and giving them sort of a platform to actually, make a contribution to the software they use every day.
Yeah, I noticed that when we go into organizations or just within organizations, when you see kind of two easily separated personalities. You either have got the people that want the change, they're hungry for it, they're open to any ideas, there's no ego, or you've got the people that immediately put up a wall, a barrier. They get very defensive. They get worried about things. They get worried about their job. So I know you've seen these type of personalities a lot within different projects and different groups that you've worked with.
And I think it is one of the challenges, and I think that's what if you're looking to really tackle any of these projects, a good skill is kind of communication, and that's where I think if everyone can communicate effectively, it solves 50% of the problems. Because if you have someone who is, as you said, putting up a wall or just really not providing some forward movement with the project, often when you understand what their concerns are, you actually can get so much value out of the knowledge they hold and almost unblock anything that's stopping the project moving forward. And it's just sort of understanding, usually your stakeholders, they'll have good opinions, and even if those opinions seem like they're driving something in the wrong direction, just by understanding them correctly, you often find that you wanted to go in the same direction all along. So it's really, I think, just effective communication is key to running a kind of good project.
Yeah, that's a very important point. I mean, we're constantly having to communicate to multiple people multiple times. And I mean, that's the whole, where you have a good project management, you're in constant communication, making sure you reiterate what bottlenecks are, what the problems are, where
Absolutely.
you're at. I think it's just, it's so important. But it's interesting with the people who make the decisions on trying to better the product. You've been in part in some of the newer workshops that we've done over the past few years of trying to get that voice in the room of leadership to say, hey, we've got these business goals. This is what we need to do, and how we're going to incorporate that how we're going to incorporate that into our product. Also, as UX people, a lot of people are very user focused, but you have this tunnel vision of not really thinking about anything else, of the development constraints, business goals, marketing, sales, things like that. So I think involving those different parties within the organization really helps elevate the product itself in the long run.
Absolutely. And I think that's where just the skills we've built up over the years are really valuable, where we've run and managed so many projects. Because absolutely, if your niche is kind of, right, I'm just going to design, you're not thinking about all the other constraints that come into actually delivering a successful product. So it's really having that holistic view, and then being able to tap into our kind of UX and design and development backgrounds and skills. I think that's where that's one of the differences that IiMPACT offers. I think it's just that wealth of knowledge. We get so many great, knowledgeable people. It's not our first rodeo, so to speak. It's we've delivered so many that you can kind of fall back on, at least all that experience to know if you're discussing something with C-suite or whoever the stakeholders are, to include absolutely all the factors that are going to come into play.
Yeah, I think, bias is a hell of a mental drug. If somebody doesn't know what good process is or have gone through a good process, they go back to bad habits. They go back to what is most familiar with them.
Absolutely.
And just like the whole enterprise, software user, you'll go through a workflow, whether it's efficient or it's efficient to you, whether it's the most efficient way of doing things. That's what they're used to, and that's what they want. And I think that's just the same. Whatever you do in your workflow day to day, if you do bad habits and that's how you've gotten through it in the past, this is kind of what you're going to do in the future until you know this is what good is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's finding that. I mean, just to add, that's the kind of joy of running the workshops and things. And I find in some of the workshops I've done is, you may, coming back to, normal communication where you have a group of clients, you have a number of users in the room together. Usually it's the sort of, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but, you have one person that maybe dominates everyone else and, they voice their opinions and they have their unique bias, but you really want to sort of get everyone's perspective. So just, the processes that we've developed to really, allow everyone to voice their opinion, have a voice, you get such a great sort of well-rounded set of opinions that you can then go through and collect feedback that is kind of all-encompassing, which is great.
I know with one of the questions around AI, obviously this is something that we've started already with the initial podcast around AI. And, with that being such at the forefront of every news and companies looking at it, we've seen where if you stifle innovation too much to the point of making your company look very valuable to private equity, you may miss out on the boat of certain innovation waves that are happening. I know that right now you're really involved with AI at the moment, and I don't know if you want to tell a little bit more about some of that.
Yeah, I think this is really the evolution of where the internet's going, and how can we harness this new technology? And I think that's key for any business we're dealing with. Again, coming back to the point of we're hardwired to innovate, and if there's new technology, well, what does this mean for your product? How can we make your product better with this technology? And I think just the possibilities we're seeing with AI to just even these, just the large, if we step away from machine learning, just the large language models and how interpretive they are and how they can sum up information. There are just so many use cases for actually, getting the user what they need as quickly as possible and just increasing efficiencies. Yeah, there are a number of, just amazing opportunities that we're looking to kind of build into our client software.
Just from you being in it for a while now, it's involved in these projects. It's not as easy as people think to integrate something successfully, integrate AI successfully.
Yeah, definitely, and especially that it's relatively young, and they're still working out certain kinks. So yeah, it does take. I think, again, just taking a product development approach and saying, look, how can we leverage the technology that exists today, identify how it's going to expand tomorrow, and have a solution that is just going to be reliable and is going to grow as the technology grows as well. Because right from today, the value is amazing that it can add.
I guess, what do you see happening maybe in the field of UX and project strategy? What does your crystal ball see happening in the next 5 to 10 years in our industry?
Well, I think in UX, if we boil it down to sort of creativity is a major piece. So there's sort of design skill, and there's the human element of understanding a visual language and what works well and how you can you can sort of portray that or build that into an interface. Where I think it's going to change is just in efficiency. There's still going to be that human element that we need to have a vision and be able to direct the vision. But getting there is going to be so much quicker. And in terms of building software, the barrier to needing to understand code is going to drop and drop. Where our prototypes could be that we build today could be fully fledged applications. If we can sort of guide it on where to go, your design would so quickly change into a production ready application. I think that's where it's going to go. And even further, I think, especially where we're focused on a lot of business applications, I really feel that there's going to be a whole paradigm shift with conversational UI, where we're so bound by convention now, where you think, all right, if you're developing a screen, I've got to develop that screen for a set of functionality. I need the screen to do A, B, and C. But then I need another screen that maybe you'll go to afterwards, and that does D, E, F. But what it's going to be simplified to with a conversational UI is you won't need screens anymore. It'll just be a sort of fluid thread of interactions where you can say, well, I can interact with a language model that's tied to automation, that I can ask them to do A and B and C and then go on to D, E, F. Whatever I need is done in a single interface. And how we sort of visualize that and how we develop that conversational UI is going to be fascinating. It is really going to revolutionize how we do everything. And I think how we use the internet and everything is 10 years from now completely different. I think it's just the whole strange sort of UI that we've built up out of necessity over the last 20, 30 years is going to melt away into just much more simpler interface. Those are my predictions.
Yeah, those are, I think there's no software that's just going to replace our jobs right now. I've seen the images of how AI looks and turns our headshot photos, and that looks a little scary. But yeah, I agree with what I've seen the advantages of is that research is helping kind of speed up your research, kind of the information gathering that helps utilize that. And kind of, for us being very skilled, we can sift through the noise versus the good stuff and understand where, what actually makes sense. I think it's just kind of how we do our jobs originally now, where we kind of brainstorm things and really refine our ideas down, and just doing that in a more efficient way. I think that's something that is really helpful right now with AI, and maybe even coming up with some basic patterns and things like that. I'm sure all our software tools are going to help us accelerate on that side as well.
Just do more in the time we have, which will be exciting. We can realize our visions a lot quicker.
Definitely want to ask you a question about kind of what kind of, I guess, as far as your career goes, what was a lesson that took you far too long to learn in your career? Maybe something that involves around more like design and UX.
Yeah, I don't know whether I have. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is really the value of teamwork. And, that could be related to anything, but I mean, in our case, it is UX and design. I think for so long I underestimated what it would be like to have a perfect team. And I think when you have team members that are thinking the same as you, and you're working together, sort of understanding sort of the handoff of their different roles. If you looked at design and development, there's something that it's cliche to say, but there's a synergistic element there where you can just work so much quicker. And, that's something that, I've only experienced a few times. I think it's fairly rare, but that is something that, you should never kind of undervalue, is having the right team and what is possible with the right team.
Yeah, no, that's definitely that's something that, you hear a lot of stories of people who are UX team of one or a front end developer team of one, and trying to do everything, the jack of all trades, and it's a hard thing to try to manage yourself unless you've got the experience. And I think within our group, we try to encourage, whether you're working with somebody or not, you still have the ability to bounce ideas off of each other. And I think we try to encourage that here because it's so valuable.
Yeah, that is because some projects will only require one UX designer. But I think, what Impact set up is really that sort of support network of being able to say, all right, I need to bounce some ideas off, or I need to, I have a technical question that maybe I need to design around. So let's speak to someone who's worked, with that specific tech stack. And that's the value of, I think, having so much experience, within Impact. All those sort of great people that, that are doing work. Yeah, you can't rival that because, again, you may be one person working on a project, but you have hundreds of years experience at your disposal to sort of, whether you're sharing it in our kind of knowledge share sessions or you're just reaching out over IM and getting it. I think that is it's a differentiating factor as well.
Yeah, and our team gets to know what good is and everybody who's working on it because, like you said, I think we all have our strengths in certain areas and you can really see, oh, okay, this is how this person's more detail oriented. This is how this person's better at visual design. And these are the techniques that they do. And this person's better at running workshops. So I think definitely there's a lot to be said about that and really leveraging the people around you or who you run into is something to really leverage, accelerate your learning very quickly.
It is that sort of knowledge sharing, and everyone is interested in upskilling and understanding what is coming out when. And I think just by having a sort of collective, almost company-wide forum like we do, being able to say, like, have you seen this? This technology? Yes, I just did a POC with this, or whatever the case is, and that just keeps everyone learning quicker and just staying on the bleeding edge versus finding out much further down the line about something.
I've got one question, I think, before we wrap up. If you could work on any type of project or with any client, what would your dream project be?
Is it bad to say I'm living my dream at the moment? I mean, I wanted to work on AI, and I'm working on AI, which is fantastic. So living the dream, I really want to push is the wrong word, but I want to explore the conversational UI elements and how machine learning, automation, and large language models coupled together will drive a UI like that. And that's really just, I wouldn't even say dropping the barriers, but destroying the barriers to entry of complex software. And that's what we want to do is, anyone that's starting out using software that may have, a number of months ramp up time is to literally say, right, if you know the theory of the industry and you're coming in here, you can just do whatever you need to do. You just need to ask it, and it'll figure out the best workflow for you. So I think we're well on our way there. And I'm good right here.
So you're living the dream is what you're saying.
Living the dream.
Well, I think with that, we'll end this episode of the podcast. I want to thank Brynley for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Mikhail.
Definitely. And if you want to listen to more about our AI dreams and nightmares, we usually have this every couple of weeks on this subject with our other partner in crime, Joe, who is helping Brynley integrate some of these great AI technologies with our clients. Yeah, any listeners out there, if you have any topics or any suggestions for future episodes, let us know. Thanks for joining today. Yeah, as usual, subscribe, rate, review the podcast. It really helps us. And thanks for tuning in. Until next time.